Hey everybody, Jesse with Nexus Property Management out of the Worcester office, putting a video together today to follow up on one that our counterpart down in Pawtucket, Greg Rice, recently put together when a tenant attempted to put a restraining order against him as a landlord. We had a recent incident where we had a tenant try and put one against us as a property management company. So little history on this with this tenant. We've probably worked with him maybe 3-4 years now. He's had some issues arise in his personal life that's made it difficult for him at points in time to make his rent on time. But we've worked through those issues. We've worked with him, and he's always made good on it. However, I think at this point in time, his ability to make his rent payment, I think he's just had one too many issues in his personal life, and I think he's not going to be able to make his rent payment. And unfortunately, it's probably going to end up in the hands of the court in terms of removing him from the apartment. But timeline of what happened with this, because it's kind of an interesting story. So once the tenant realized he was going to have problems making his rent payment for the month, he ended up calling the Board of Health and had an inspection done on his apartment. The inspector found, I think, only 2 deficiencies on the apartment. So I believe what the tenant was trying to do is create a little ammo for himself if we end up in court trying to show a judge that the landlord is a slumlord and has a lot of deferred maintenance that he hasn't taken care of. But this kind of backfired because there was only 2 deficiencies that showed up on the inspection report. After the winter, there was a little bit of litter kind of throughout the property that the inspector wanted us to go and pick up, which we got done immediately. And the other issue on the inspection report was, and the way the inspector wrote it, was that there was an active leak in the tenant's apartment and that there was some damage caused from this active leak. When we got this report, we actually sent the guys out immediately. As a management company, when we hear the term active leak, we look at that as being an emergency call. We don't want to see our tenants having to deal with water coming down through their ceiling. Nobody wants to deal with that. And 2, there's damage being caused to the owner's building that we got to make sure there's no further damage being caused to the owner's investment. So, like I said, we dispatched the guys immediately. They headed out to the property, keys in hand, in case they needed to get into any of the units. They knocked on the tenant's door, no answer. Knocked on the tenant's door again, shouted in a loud voice, Nexus Property Management Maintenance, still no response. Like I said, they had keys in hand. They opened the tenant's door, stuck their head in. Nexus Property Management Maintenance finally got a response from the tenant. He was actually in the apartment. Technicians immediately shut the door as the tenant said he'd be right there. There was a little bit of a heated exchange, unfortunately, though, once the tenant came and met the techs outside. He was very unhappy with the technicians opening their door, his door. But as we tried to calm as the technicians tried to calm the tenant down and explain to him why it was, we felt that there was an active leak. We looked at this as an emergency situation, tried to show the tenant what it was that we had received in the mail from this inspection report. The tenant just wasn't having it. He was very upset. And at that point in time, we knew it was just best to just go ahead, try and diffuse the situation. Just said, hey, listen, when would you like us to come back? Because he had actually explained to us that there was no active leak, that the leak had actually already been repaired. However, there was some water stains on some ceiling tiles that needed to be changed out. So we just said, hey, listen, whenever you want us to come back, just let us know. He actually wanted us to come back a couple weeks later, kind of a long story as to why, but in trying to appease the tenant, trying to keep him cool, calm, and collective, we just tried to appease him and diffuse the situation as best we could. Technicians came back a couple weeks later, switched out the ceiling tiles. Everything's hunky-dory. About a week later, we get served in the mail, and we are due in court as he's trying to put a TRO, temporary restraining order, on us as a management company. We head into court. We have everything basically documented as to what took place during the exchange when we tried to make this repair. And we go into a mediation and we meet with a housing specialist. The tenant kind of just rambled on about how he was just trying to feel safe in his apartment. It was now our turn to speak. We showed the mediator exactly what it was that we had received, our standard protocol for how we handle situations like this. Mediator, who's supposed to stay neutral the entire time, did point out to the tenant that we did do everything that pretty much would have been expected out of us at that point in time, and that we are protected by law to go into the apartment if there is an emergency situation like a burst water pipe or something along those lines. So at that point in time, I think the tenant started to realize that he really wasn't going to get what it was that he was looking for, and he kind of started to backtrack and started to basically say that he really just wants to work with us, he just wants to feel safe, and he just wanted to put in writing how standard maintenance calls as well as emergency calls were going to be handled moving forward. So basically we just had to hand him like in writing our standard operating procedures for maintenance calls. So it ended up just being a giant waste of time. Now that I look back on it, it's pretty clear to me that he was just trying to create situations, trying to create a little bit of ammo, because he's probably going to end up in court for non-payment and going to be forcing the courts to get him out of the apartment. He was trying to create a situation where he could show a judge that the landlord is a slumlord, has a bunch of deferred maintenance, but when the report came back and there was only 2 things on the report that we responded to immediately, that kind of didn't bode well in his favor. And then the fact that what we did in terms of responding immediately, working with him on making the repairs, how it was not us just going into the apartment, but the way that the inspection was written up was what had caused us to go into the apartment. He kind of just started to realize that he probably doesn't have 2 feet to stand on, and he's probably going to be out of that apartment here very shortly. So once again, as Greg pointed out, these are things that he has to deal with as a landlord, but we too have to deal with these things as a management company. They're very difficult. A lot of times it's just retaliation that we're having to deal with and waste our time with, and saving the owner from having to waste their time. So once again, this is Jesse with Nexus Property Management out of the Worcester office. Thank you.